Howdy doody, my name is Susie, and today I thought I would share with you the latest project that I'm working on. I'm working on a centerpiece for my coffee table, and I got it in my mind that I wanted water lilies, so I looked online. I found a number of videos on how to make these water lilies with crepe paper, and I came across ABC TV, and the person who is making the flowers on that YouTube channel has definitely mastered the art of flower making. So I followed those instructions, but I've tweaked it and made it my own, and I thought I would share it with you as I go through the process. And I'm halfway there. So what I've done is I've taken my shallow crystal bowl, and you probably have one in your cabinet. This is the time to use it. And I just filled it with dollar store glass beads, and I'm making my flowers. This is the water lily. I'm making it short so that I can just stick it in the glass pebbles and it holds perfectly. There's the flower, there's the glass beads, and this is just a starter, but these are the flowers that we're going to be making today. So I'm going to show you, first of all, how to make the actual water lily. The large full flower. We're going to be making a water lily bulb, and that's just the name that I've given it to identify it. We're going to be making the water lily bud, and this is a closed bud. We're going to be making the water lily pad, and this is made of stock paper. And we're going to be making the furled water lily pad or leaf. And it looks like this. Does that look realistic? So I think my arrangement is going to look stunning once it's done. By the way, this is very heavy once you fill it with the pebbles. Anyone can make these flowers. If you can use a glue stick and a pair of scissors, you can make all of these flowers as well. So let me take you over to the other station. I'm going to show you exactly how I make it. What we're going to need for this project is some crepe paper, and I'm using 3 colors because I'm making white water lilies, so I have white, yellow, and green. We're going to need some oil pastels. We're going to need some floral wire, and this is 18 gauge. We're going to need some floral tape. So we're going to need some bendable straws, and I'm using these straws because the water lily stem is thick. We're going to need a chopstick, some scissors, a glue gun, Q-tips, some bathroom tissue, and some little pliers, but those aren't 100% necessary. Oh, and I'm just using an old knife, and this is just to curl the stamen once I get to that point. So those are the materials that you're going to need. They're not that much different than from the coffee filter flowers, except that we, of course, are using crepe paper as opposed to the filters, but it's going to produce a really beautiful and different flower. So don't feel intimidated by all the supplies that you see here. This really is a simple process. Like I said, if you can cut and glue, the rest is assembling. And I've actually gone ahead and created a template that I'll share with you. So there's a pattern that you can print out and use for everything that we're doing today. So you've got your pattern. It takes all the guesswork, measuring, and a lot of time out of making these flowers. So the first thing we're going to do, and I like to organize my project, so it's a bit of an assembly, only because it helps me remember how to put everything together. And the first thing that we're going to start off with is cutting out and creating our stamen for our flower. And that would be these 3 patterns. So I've marked the length. You may have a slightly different crepe paper. The crepe paper that I'm using today is heavyweight and there's a lot of stretch. You can see. So you've cut out your template and you're going to take your paper and you're going to determine which way it's stretching. Mine is stretching this way. And you can see on the template, I've added a stretch line. This is the direction that the paper stretches, so you need to cut your pattern keeping that in mind. So I've determined how my paper stretches. I take my strip, apply it, and then I'm going to cut out a strip for all 3 of my stencils. So I cut my 3 lengths in the 3 different sizes, like so, and they're all stretching in the same direction. 3 centers, and all we're going to do is we're going to take our little piece of paper, and this is the smallest of the 3, and we're just going to fold it over 4 times so it's this big. And I find that it's easier to hold it with your fingers like this. What we're going to do is we're going to come in and cut out little notches. Just halfway down. And we're going to get something like this. Then we're going to take our next piece. We're going to do the same thing. Double it again, hold it in place. And you don't have to use the template for this. You can just do it on your own. We're just going to nip off the edge and then just come in and cut out little notches. So you get this. Cut out the little notches. And you're going to get something like this. Then we're going to go ahead and take our largest piece, about just halfway. You just want to cut it to about there. And the widest, the last strip, you just want to make them slightly bigger. So almost like you're creating a little crown. 3 pieces, small, medium, and large. And all you're going to want to do is you want to curve it because we're going to roll this around this way and we want all the little petals to roll towards the center. So I just found that the easiest way to do this is by using a knife and just like you would curl a ribbon, just curl the little petals like that. Then we're going to do the same thing to the medium. I'm doing this backwards so you can see it, but to the larger one, we're just going to open up those little petals. You're just going to stretch them out at the base, and that on its own is already curling the paper. Then we're just going to take our scissors and just curl the tips in. So we've cut out our stamen, and next we're going to cut out our petals. And if you notice on the template, here are the petals, and I boxed them in there's, because you're gonna fold this in half and cut out each petal, I just find it's easier. And the paper is stretching this way. So for our flower, we have 4 different size petals and we're going to need 6 of each. So for our petals, I went ahead and cut out the width of my pattern onto my crepe paper, making sure it's stretching in the right way and it's stretching this way. So then I took my pattern, placed it on the crepe paper, and then I just marked it all the way along until I got 6 petals. All my little pieces of paper cut out the right lengths. I can take my pattern, you're gonna fold it in half, and you're gonna cut it out. So it's a petal like this, fold it in half. We're gonna take our crepe paper, fold that in half, line up the folds, and then it just makes it very easy. We're just gonna cut it around like so. And this isn't rocket science. It's very easy to do. Now we've got our petals. And don't worry if it's not 100% perfect, it's okay. This paper, remember, it's going to stretch and we're going to create petals. So if you're off by a slight amount, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So now I've got 6 petals of each size, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the smallest petal, and this is where you are going to add your color. And you don't have to do this, but if you like the look of this flower, this is where you can definitely express yourself creatively. You can use any colors that you like. I'm just going to show you what I did in order to get this flower. So all I did, while you have your little pieces of petal templates cut out and flat, this is the time to come in and just with a little bit of your oil pastel. I didn't even use very much. You can see how much is there. And with a Q-tip, I smoothed it into the petal. It's all in making it look realistic. So that's how I colored the first petal. And I actually did the same thing to the next size petal. I just took a little bit of my pastel color and then just came in and added that tone right at the base. Now there's no real secret to adding the color. Just remember that we're going to be gluing part of this, so you're not going to see this part, and there's going to be another set of petals. So this is just going to be a hint coming through. So you can see the inside petals and then the outside petals. I've only gone up maybe 3/4 of a way, so it's very muted. Then the third layer of petals, I did something a little bit different. I took my white piece of paper and I took green and I just went around the edge. I went around the edge like this. And then for the last outer petals, I did some green at the base, but I made it as the outside of the petal. The inside of the petal, I didn't add anything. So if you like this technique, but not the white water lily, you could use the same color combinations and technique and just use a different colored crepe paper such as pink. and it would give you the same effect and shading. So now I've got all my petals shaded, and the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to create like a little boat. We're just going to take it and stretch it right there in the middle. And you create this little cup. We're going to do that with all our petals. So the top part is cupped, but the bottom part is unstretched, and we're going to be gluing this to the base of the flower anyway. All I'm really doing is just stretching a line down the center, and that gives me a nice, perfect cup. Even though these flowers may be a little bit more labor intensive, you're not making a whole bouquet like we did with the roses. So we're only making a few little flowers. We're only making 1 or 2, so it's definitely worth, I think, the time. Plus, you have to look at these projects, or I look at these projects not as a task, but it's just cutting away some time for myself to do something that's relaxing, enjoyable, and creative. And I end up with a beautiful bouquet for my house, so it's all good. Got our petals in our 4 piles, and we've got our 3 rows of stamen. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut a little square about, what is that? About a 2-inch square of crepe paper. I'm just going to take some regular tissue paper, or we're going to take some regular bathroom tissue paper, and we're just going to create a little ball, and it's going to end up being about 1 inch. We're going to take our floral wire like this, and I've just added the little curl at the end just because it helps hold that center ball in place. And I'm making mine short because I'm putting it in this short vase, but you use whatever lengths that you're going to want. Take some glue and glue it. I think everybody can do that. And you can buy dual temperature glue guns nowadays and use low temperature glue. So basically it still glues the same, but the glue does not get as hot, and it's really nice for these types of crafts where you're using a lot of glue. Something like this. And then we're just going to take that little piece of yellow crepe paper, and we're just going to pull it to cover it. So then you've got this, and then you're just going to use some of this floral tape, which is this waxy tape that has some stretch. And one of the viewers who is a florist mentioned that it's better to, or it becomes stickier, to tear it off as opposed to cutting it. And then you're just going to twist, you're just going to pull and twist. And when you pull it, it makes it sticky and it adheres to the floral wire. And then you're going to work from the smallest to the medium to the large. So we're going to start off, and we're going to start with the smallest of the 3, and we're going to glue it. You're going to come down about 3/4 of the ball. I'm just marking this so you can see. You're not going to do this yourself, but 3/4 of the way down is where you're going to line up that bottom of the stamen, and this is where you're going to glue it. So you're gluing it to there. So I've lined it up. It's going only as far as there. And then we're going to just glue it all the way around like this. This goes pretty fast. You're just going to add a little bead of glue along the bottom and wrap it around. See how it's starting to create that nice effect. And then we're going to take the middle piece and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to glue it all the way around. And it's going to come down maybe a sliver below the last one. You want to make sure that all the flowers are kind of matching up in the center but not covering one another. So now we've got this, and you can see how it's flat underneath here. But that's good because we're creating a base, because our water lily is going to sit like this. This is the water, this is the base of the lily, and we want it to be fairly flat. So now you can open this up a little bit if you like. And it's already beginning to look very realistic. This one you're going to glue on, and you just want it to be slightly lower than the last one so that we can cover underneath this little petal. So we want to glue it so it's like this. After you have it all glued into place, it's going to look like this. And at this point, you just want to fluff up the outer layer and just open it up a bit. So the next step is going to be in securing our petals to our flower. And we're going to want to overlap this a bit on the underside, like so. So we're going to tack it on like this at the base. And we're just going to tack it to the underside. So now you can see it's going to finish that off very nicely underneath here. We're going to do all our petals like that. And there's 6 petals. So if you really want to make them very, very symmetrical, then I do 1 on either side and then add 2 in between. So now it's beginning to look like something. This is where things start getting exciting. And if you look at the underside, you see I've covered it. Maybe I gotta add another little dab of glue, but from the underside, it's covered. So now we're just going to add the next size up. So I'm taking it and putting it in between the last 2 petals. So that's the second row of flowers. You see how it's finished underneath? Now the excitement level is definitely going up because it's starting to look really beautiful. Petals that we're going to do, remember, they're the ones that we colored just on the tips. We're going to do the exact same thing, layer it between our last 2 petals. The flower is getting to a point that it's almost easier to add the petals from the underside. So I almost made a critical error. Before we add our final petals, we're going to add at this point our stem. And the way that we're going to make our stem, like I said, so we're going to use these bendable straws, and I'm just going to cut it a little bit above where the straw begins to bend. So I've just cut it a little bit. This is where it starts to bend. And you want to stretch it out a little bit because we're going to have to roll this with our floral tape. And then you just want to take a rough measurement. So I'm just going to cut it to there. I just pull it until there's a little piece that I can hang on to. And all we're going to do is we're going to add glue. We're going to add glue to our stem. We're going to glue this right onto here. So taking your glue gun, you're going to add some glue around the flower and some glue down the stem. And we're just, so your stem will end up gluing to one side of your straw because it's obviously thinner. Now we're going to come in with our final petal. So in our final petal, and the reason we've saved the final petal is because we want it to overlay, the straw, because this is now going to give us our starting point for our floral tape. Down and glues onto the straw. You see what I'm doing? Right there. Now you can see that these petals are glued onto the straw. So now we're going to be able to use this little collar paper to help adhere our tape. And we're just going to add the tape. A little challenging doing the straw because it's squishy, since it's only the thin wire on the inside. So you just take your time and roll it, stretch and roll, and overlap your tape just in case your flower stretches. You won't have those gaps. And then I think at the end, because it's open, I'm just going to roll it back up. I'm just going to roll it back up onto itself. And I'm going to tear it off up here. And that gives us a very realistic stem. And what do you think of the flower? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the bulb. And this is the bulb. This is super easy. You can take about, you can take a styrofoam ball, and this is 1.5 inches, or you can just make a ball with your tissue paper. We're gonna do the same thing. Take our wire. Oh, holy moly. That went right across the room. Take our wire. Just create the little loop at the top, like so. And then for this, for the styrofoam, it's pretty easy. You can push it in to place. Push it into the bulb, then I take it out. Add some hot glue. The hot glue actually melts the styrofoam as well. And then just add the wire. So now you've got this. For the bulb are 2 stencils, and we're going to be using just a round circle. We're going to cut 7 circles out of this. And then we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to need 5 little pieces of crepe paper that stretch this way. And we're going to be cutting out this leaf, which is good for the bulb, and it's also good for the bud. So I've cut out the leaf pattern, and I've cut out my 5 little rectangles that are exactly the height of my leaf. We're going to fold this in half. We're going to fold our leaf in half. And we're going to cut this out exactly like we did the petals. So we're going to stack our little leaves. We're just going to put them off to the side. And then we're going to come in and, again, we're going to make our, it's a circle. So it doesn't really matter which way you cut it. It can only stretch one way, and it's going to stretch either one way or the other. So now we have our 7 little circles, and all we're going to do, color it, and you'll be able to see. So take your center circle, and I'm going to color it so that it is deeper pink. But you can do this, and this is just my own interpretation. Person's interpretation. And then I'm going to, now that I've colored it, I'm just going to add it to the top of the ball. So now that we've glued it to the top of the ball, this is the only part we're really going to see, so that's why I've colored this. We're going to take our petals that stretch this way. We're going to stretch it to fit the ball. Let me color that in to show you what it looks like. So for these circles, you have to make sure that they're stretching this way. I'm going to color the tips. So I'm just going to color the top of it, and that way it'll also help me identify where the top of the petal is going to be. Dark. So the new blooms, I'm just highlighting them with a bit of pink and yellow. There's no rhyme or reason, just whatever is pleasing to the eye. So I've added the 3 petals close to the center. And then my other outer petals, I've just added a bit of green and yellow. And I've just added it to the edge because it starts to transition into the green leaves. I stretch it out. Add my glue. And then I'm going to add the petal like so in an alternate pattern. So I'm alternating. So then we've got this like that. And then the rest is going to be our leaves. And our leaves, I'm just going to dye them a little bit at the base with brown. Shaded the petals a little bit on the bottom. And then all we're gonna do, we just wanna stretch them in the middle. We wanna keep this small at the bottom. So we're just trying to create this effect, that effect. And for this, we're going to add our stem now. So again, we're gonna be using another straw, and we're just gonna stretch it out. Just stretch it out evenly, about that much. Then I'm going to insert it. I'm going to add glue to the bottom. I'm gonna add glue to the bottom of the styrofoam ball, but I'm also gonna add glue. Oh, hold on. I'm just gonna add a bit of floral tape to the wire because it just gives it some stickiness, and for whatever reason, it just makes it feel like once you insert it into the straw, it just feels like it's easier to glue everything. So we've added our little bit of tape, and now we're going to insert the straw, and we're gonna add glue to the underside of the ball, and we're gonna add glue to the wire. We're gonna push this up, and we're gonna hold it in place until it's glued. Like that. It feels glued. Yeah. And now I'm going to glue my leaves to the bud. But again, I'm going to let it overlap a little bit and glue it right onto the straw so that I'm creating this little paper collar. It'll be much easier to adhere our floral tape to. I also glue it to the straw. So now I've glued all 5 petals, or I've glued all the 5 leaves. Now I can come in my floral tape, and it makes it much easier to start because it really does hold on to that crepe paper. And so you're pulling and twirling at the same time. It just seems to hold better. It's a little slippery on, it gets a little slippery trying to add it to the straw without the ribs. So there you go. There is the bud. Now, depending on how open or closed you want your bud, all you have to do, if you want a more closed in, so just by stretching that outer leaf and overlapping it and tacking just that little spot, it closes up the bud. So this is what I'm calling the lily pad bulb, and I think it looks really cute, especially if it's paired up. And they'll look nice once you have everything combined. Whoops. The next thing we're going to do is the water bud. Now for the water bud, you just want to take some bathroom tissue. And for this, we're going to create an egg shape as opposed to a circle. So you want a shape like this. So now we have this. And here we have, and this is the same leaf pattern that we're using, but we're only cutting 4 leaves out of this. You could actually use 3, but 3, 4. Cut out your leaves. So we have our 4 leaves, and again, we're just going to just open it up in the center to cup it like this. And we're going to glue it around our paper towel. The leaf should actually, my paper towel is a little bit long. The leaf should actually be covering the stem. So hold on, I'm just going to make my bud a little shorter. Okay, that's good now. So I've just shortened the bud because I've shortened the paper because I want my leaf to overlap the stick. But actually, before I do that, I forgot. Just gonna add some of that floral tape to my stem because it just makes everything easier to handle. And then of course, I'm gonna take my leaves and I wanna make sure that the leaf overhangs. And I'm just going to shape it to conform to the bud. So I'm gonna shape it to conform like that. I'll tack it on both sides. Petals, so you can see how much I'm actually overlapping. So there's gonna be 2, 3, 4. Only got a little sliver left. That's for my last leaf. And then there's a little opening there. Just gonna add a bead of glue on the inside and then bring all those little points together. I'm gonna leave this little part open because it looks realistic. See? And now we're gonna do the same thing we did before with the straw. You can add a dab of glue on the inside of your straw and just hold that wire to make contact with the bottom of the straw. And we've got our bud. You can come in and color it however you like. And all I did was added some dark brown just to the base. And this just gives it some shadows. And I can even add a touch of yellow at the tips. Maybe just where the sun has just burnt them a little bit. And then you get this beautiful little water lily bud. Now, the next leaf that I'm going to show you is the actual lily pad, and I've used cardstock. That's actually, it's really nice because it's light on one side and a little bit darker on the other. And I've just cut out this shape, and I'll give you its stencil so that you can copy it out too. And all I've done after cutting out the shape to create this ribbed effect is I took one of my floral wires and I took the underside and I placed it underneath. And all I did was I took my wire, placed it underneath, and I rubbed it from the other side to create that definition. And I took the wire and I kept moving it all the way around, radiating from this center. I took my piece of paper, I just put my floral tape underneath it, like so. And then you want to take something like the edge of your scissors or anything that you think works. I think I've used a cork. A cork works nicely because you're not in danger of ripping the paper. So then you create a ribbed effect. So there's an indent. And then I did that all the way around. So I just kept radiating from the same spot. Move the wire around. So I created all these indents. This is the underside. This is the top. This is just, and you want to do this gently, lightly, but you're just going to run, and I'm using brown. You want to run your pastel color just lightly over it. You get this, and you can see how it picks up on all of, actually, I think I'm going to use just a little, instead of a Q-tip, I just use a little piece of paper. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off some of that pastel. So I've just wiped it off, and look it really does create a realistic veined leaf. And then for my edge, I'm going to take that edge, and all I did, and you want about 1/4 of an inch, is you're just going to bend it all the way around. And you see how it creates that edge, which makes it look very realistic. Now this cardstock is quite thick, so it does take a little bit of negotiating. And with this little edge, all I did was I came in and I just colored it in brown just to give it a more of a definition so that it created a real sense of depth. Tip. And just blending it in. I'll add a few little highlights where the sun is maybe hit. And then if I want more definition on the veins, I can always come in with my brown. And you can see that it highlights all those veins. And it makes it look very realistic. Add a stem to my lily pad because the lily pads are generally floating in the water. So I'm just gonna have it sit. I'm just gonna have it sit on my bowl this way, and it'll just hook on to one of the plants in the bowl. So you can certainly, if you did want to add a stem to have these elevated, say you were doing this for a longer vase, then what you would have to do is glue your stick to the bottom of the lily pad and secure it by adding another little piece of green paper to the top and glue this together. You can bend it and then you will have this effect. And then you do the stem just like you did with all the other ones. We're going to be making our furled lily pad leaf, and I think these look beautiful. Even if I didn't have the water lily flowers, I still love these. I think they look very realistic and very exotic, and they look amazing in my vase. Everything's falling off. I've given you a little pattern. This is our furled leaf. Again, the stretch of the paper goes that way. And you're going to cut this out. You're going to put it on a fold. You're going to cut it out, and it's going to become almost like a heart shape. Cut out the template. It's going to look like this. So now we're going to make our furled lily pad leaf. And we've got our stencil, which this is the fold. And we need to make sure our paper is stretching this way. And we're gonna lay our leaf this way. And in order to fold this over, because it's a little difficult because of the ridges are running this way, I just take a ruler and I put it at the midway point, and then I fold my paper. So I fold it this way, and it's stretching this way. So then all I have to do lay my pattern where the fold is, and then I'm going to cut this out. And then you're left with something that looks like a heart, and it's stretching this way because we cut it like this. Remember, it's stretching this way. So now all we're going to do is we're going to open this up, and then using a chopstick, and this is probably maybe the most challenging part of making the flower, we want to curl the ridge over the chopstick, and we want to curl it towards the center. So we're laying the chopstick down like this. You have to bend the paper around the chopstick because you're going to find some resistance with the direction of the stretch of the paper. And then just slowly wrap the paper around it. And roll it up. So that you've got this. You're going to do that on one side, and then you're going to want to do it on the other side. I find it's easier to use a skewer stick. And roll it like you use the skewer, you can definitely get a much tighter curl, as you can see there. So you do that to one side, and then you're gonna have to do it to the other side. This part is really getting it around your skewer and getting it started, and then it's fairly easy to twist. Then you can just pull it out, and then you're going to be left with something like this, and then you just tight curls, and I'm gonna leave that like that. And then you can see there's a line right down the center. And what we're gonna do is we're going to take our floral wire. We're going to lay glue right down the center here, not at the tip, but from almost at the top, all the way down, a thin bead of glue. We're going to immediately anchor the floral wire to the tape. Then we're going to come around, and we're just going to squeeze it in between and press it. in order for it to glue in place. And it'll be glued like this, and I'll show you an overview. I think it'll be easier than me doing it on screen. And once it's done, so you can either make your bouquet in a small vessel like this, or I think that this is going to look beautiful on my coffee table, and I'll show you a couple of photographs so you can see what the finished product looks like. So if you enjoyed this video on making water lilies out of paper, crepe paper that is, I hope that you share it. And if you'd like to see more content, I hope you subscribe. Until next time, happy flower making!